Has Donald Trump unwittingly started World War III, or at least a large geographical regional conflict? That's the question a lot of people are asking as we are now in day 3 of the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran. That is no longer just a limited exchange between adversaries. Now it is a regional, geographical, economic hot mess that is drawing more and more countries in. It's a tinderbox, really. The question that analysts are asking right now is, has this conflict crossed that threshold into a full-scale regional war? And where does it go from here? And is it the beginning of a global conflict? Of course, the person holding the matches at this point is Donald Trump. Let's take a look at everything that has happened. But before I go there, remember, please like, share, and subscribe and sign up for our membership if you can. My team and I are working very closely also to figure out special offerings that we can give to those who've signed up for our members. Okay, let me put together all of the information that's happened since the last video I uploaded 24 hours ago. And if you pack all of this information together in one place, because it's coming in as trickles, if you put it together in one place, it seems fairly shocking and a little intimidating. So let me tell you what has happened. The Iranian Red Crescent Society has said at least 555 people have been killed so far in Iran in those airstrikes by US and Israel. Remember, this includes the primary school girls who died in the strike on the school that was an Israeli strike. In an attempt, obviously, to liberate the women of Iran, they hit a girls' school in which there were little children. It also says, the Red Crescent also says that 131 cities across Iran have come under attack, and these are staggering numbers for just 3 days of bombardment. According to the Economic Times, citing Iranian sources, the strikes have targeted military facilities, intelligence infrastructure, critical sites across the country. In other news, Saudi has now told AFP that if Iran mounts a concerted attack on its oil facilities, that the Kingdom of Saudi will respond militarily. 4 American soldiers have been killed in the Iranian strikes. Netanyahu's office apparently has been targeted by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, who claimed that they have hit his office. There's no confirmation from Israel on this. France has said that it is ready to help Gulf countries, which are currently being targeted by Iran. Israeli Defense Forces have said that it has killed Saeed Yaha Hamidi, who is Iran's Deputy Minister of Intelligence. That they have also killed the head of Iran's espionage division, along with other unnamed regime officials. Now, the IDF did not specify how and where these killings have occurred. BBC reports that Iran has not confirmed these deaths either. But if this is true, if Israeli Defense Forces are taking out the heads of various departments, and we saw what they did yesterday, but after that, the Deputy Minister of Intelligence, the head of the Espionage Division, and other officials, this would mean assassinations are taking place on the ground. What are called, the grammar of this is really harsh, but decapitation strikes against Iran's intelligence structure, which means that their covert operations are actually active on the ground in Iran. So this would suggest Mossad. And the fact that they are actually taking credit, saying we have assassinated the heads of the intelligence in Iran as well. So not only are we seeing airstrikes and overt operations, but there's reason to believe that there are covert operations taking place on the ground as well, and that maybe Mossad is actually active inside of Iran. We don't have confirmation from Iran for this, but according to the BBC, IDF is taking credit for it, at least, that these sort of decapitation strikes are happening within Iran. Apart from that, Iranian-backed militia is joining the fight. So this is no longer a conflict that is confined to Iranian soil. Hezbollah has fired missiles from Lebanon into Israel, and Israel has responded by hitting Lebanon, where 31 people have died, 149 have been injured. Israeli military said that it's now looking at all options on the table regarding Lebanon, including a potential ground invasion. These are all very important words of possible escalation, and that signifies a raising of stakes. Now, Lebanon's prime minister has turned around and told Hezbollah that these strikes are illegal and they put the country at risk, and they have banned Hezbollah's military activity and demanded that it hand over its weapons. But again, we must point out here, while the statement reflects Beirut's desire to avoid being dragged into a further conflict, the government of Lebanon does not really have the ability to tell Hezbollah what to do. And so, as a result, the Hezbollah's militia functions as sort of a parallel army in Lebanon. And in many cases, they're more powerful than the establishment in Lebanon. So, and they've normally respond to Iran and not the Lebanon infrastructure. So there is a mess that has gotten involved, already a mess in Lebanon that now gotten involved in this conflict. There have been strikes across the Gulf. From what we understand from family members in Dubai, things have quietened down. There is a small sort of suggestion on social media that maybe Abu Dhabi airport will start operations again, but I do not have a confirmation on this. And when I checked the flight tracker, Flight Radar 24 on the Abu Dhabi airport, there's no sign of any flight actually taking off from the Abu Dhabi airport for now. But remember, these airports between Abu Dhabi, Dubai airports are actually really important. And when they freeze like this, business freezes in that entire neighborhood. So they're going to want to get it up and running as quickly as possible. But as of now, this is what has happened. So far, we've seen strikes in Bahrain, in Iraq, in Jordan, in Kuwait, in Oman, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, and in UAE. This is sounding, like I told you, when you put this information together, it sounds very harsh. Kuwait's air defenses intercepted hostile drones. US Embassy compound in Kuwait City was struck, and there was visuals of smoke rising. There are no confirmed casualties as of now. The Kuwaiti Defense Ministry, and I want to point this out slowly to you, the Kuwaiti Defense Ministry said several American warplanes crashed in their country. The pilots were reportedly taken to hospital. The US then confirmed towards the end of today that the planes were accidentally shot down by Kuwait by mistake. Now, this is what we call the fog of war, where basically there's so much going on that these sort of mistakes tend to take place in friendly fire. And the fact that this is so chaotic actually makes me nervous about the fact that more of this might happen again. Thankfully, there was no life lost in those American warplanes, because Donald Trump would have to answer questions domestically, and the US would then have to respond as well. And we don't want the US to respond, because that will escalate the problem further. War is not good for anybody. Now, there was also a drone strike on Britain's Royal Air Force base in Cyprus. Now, the UK Ministry of Defence said the damage was minimal. There was a fire. It was contained. But this has come hours after the Prime Minister of UK said that Britain will allow the Americans to use their bases in West Asia for limited defense operations and protect British lives and interests in West Asia. Cyprus airport, towards the end of today, was evacuated after a radar detected a suspect object. These are all major escalation points. Now, Iran's ambassador has said to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which Iran is regularly accountable to, that US-Israeli strikes have targeted the Natanz enrichment facility, which is central to Iran's nuclear program. The US and Israel have not acknowledged that strike. Iran is calling this unlawful, criminal, and brutal on what he described as peaceful, safeguarded nuclear facilities. There has been a complete shock to the oil and energy industry of the world. Saudi Arabia's Ras Taruna oil refinery reportedly halted its operations after a drone threat, according to Bloomberg. This has been confirmed by Saudi authorities. Ras Taruna is one of Middle East's largest refineries, with a capacity of 550,000 barrels per day. So that actually stopping, operations means a lot to the oil prices that have already gone up 30%. Of course, the Strait of Hormuz is also very important, because it carries approximately 1/5 of the global oil supply comes through this very narrow shipping area. That's about 15 million barrels a day. And that area has been under severe stress after vessels were attacked and they were given warnings. Insurance rates of those oil tankers are rising. So in a lot of cases, the insurance companies are telling the tankers and the ships not to move at all. Supply anxieties are building across the world. In fact, there is one very interesting satellite image that tracks the radars of these ships that show that they're all piling up on one side of the strait. If Hormuz remains closed, or if it closes completely, global oil prices will spike. In India, where we import more than 90% of the crude oil that we use, we're going to feel that pain almost immediately. One oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman was struck by a drone boat that was carrying explosives. One Indian crew member was killed. Uh, this was confirmed by Oman State News Agency. I just want to remind you that there are 10 million Indians living across various Gulf countries. And we talked about this yesterday. And those 10 million Indians have 10 million Indian families back home who are worried about them. One ship in Bahrain was struck by an unknown projectile. No casualties have been listed. Qatar has paused its natural gas production. Again, it is the world's top natural gas producer, and it has paused production for the time being. Um, there has been, of course, a lot of stories that are coming out from both sides that have not been confirmed, and because of the fog of war combined with AI, combined with social media, you have to be very careful about what you're willing to believe. But a couple of things that have come out, like I told you, Iranian sources claiming that they've had a missile strike Benjamin Netanyahu's office and other Israeli command facilities, including the headquarters of Mossad in Tel Aviv. Neither of these two stories have been confirmed. So we don't know for sure if Netanyahu's office has been hit. We do know that some strikes have happened in Jerusalem, and we don't know for sure whether or not Mossad's headquarters have been hit in Tel Aviv as well. There's no confirmation for that, but these two stories are doing the rounds currently right now on social media. Now, this is everything that has happened, but let's take a look at what happens to each of these players. And I want to take the Gulf states, which is Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, all of these in one bracket, right? Gulf countries are right now facing an impossible dilemma. On one hand, nations like Saudi, UAE, Qatar have built a global reputation, or Saudi is building that global reputation. UAE already has it because they're building a reputation of stability, of being energy suppliers, of being financial hubs, of being safe investment destinations. So these sort of strikes and nervousness actually bothers that image and rattles those markets. On the other hand, they do not want to enter a full-scale war as well, because Iran is a powerful neighbor. It's threatening their oil infrastructure, it's threatening their ports, their shipping routes. But if they don't retaliate forcefully, they risk seeming weak. If they retaliate, they join the conflict. If they don't retaliate and they seem restrained, they appear weak or they appear dependent on American protection. So their core problem is escalation endangers their security, endangers their markets and their economy. Neutrality is no longer an option on the table right now, because, like they have said, their territories are being hit at this point and they have to respond in some way. So the Gulf countries as a bloc right now are in a really difficult position. Let's take a look at what's happening with the United States. What is Donald Trump saying? And it's amazing how for the last year and a half we've spent our time just trying to figure out what Donald Trump means by what he says. Now, he has said three things. The operations will continue until objectives are achieved. Conflict will last up to 4 weeks. So this deadline has come from him. Conflict will last up to 4 weeks. He's not told us why. What is he going to do in 4 weeks and why he thinks it's going to last 4 weeks. The campaign has been codenamed Operation Epic Fury. It's like a person who's fond of video games. But it is moving at lightning speed, he has said. Now, here are my challenges with what has been said. When he's saying that he will continue until the objectives are achieved, we would love to know what his stated objectives are. These objectives are, if anything, really loosely defined. I mean, is it that you want to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, which you said that they're really close to doing, but you've been saying that for 15 years. So which is it? You also said that you destroyed all of their nuclear capacities in the last strike that you had actioned in Iran. So why are they so close to building again? So is it their nuclear weapons capability that you're actually going after? Is it their missile capabilities that you're going after? There's no clear articulation also on what success would look like. Are you hoping to destroy all of these bases? We don't know. There are no publicly declared benchmarks. There's no timeline for what it is they want to do. And most of all, no stated exit strategy. And like I said yesterday, for the people of Iran, this will be of interest. What are you hoping to achieve? You've assassinated, you've taken out the head of that country, but what are you hoping to achieve? And what does that look like? And what does success look like to you? And what is your exit strategy? We don't have any of this information. And history will teach us that military campaigns framed with these sort of open-ended terms, without an end point, without a plan, and Donald Trump does not have a plan that we know of, this will actually not, I mean, makes de-escalation more and more difficult when we don't know what you're aiming for. And then what happens is events just are reactionary, and that is really, really dangerous. In this case, and I will tell you that he's received a lot of scrutiny because he's not even communicated with his domestic government, and we'll come to that. What he has said, though, is that he's open to talks with Iran's new leadership. Now, here's the interesting thing: we know for sure from Oman's authorities, who were actually helping them negotiate, that they were already negotiating and Iran had agreed to most or all of Donald Trump's terms. But he still went ahead and attacked Iran, and now he's open to talks with Iran's new leadership, and we don't know what that means. But what we understand is that the new leadership has rejected negotiations with the United States, and Iran's security chief has basically said, we will not negotiate with the United States. He has accused Trump of plunging the entire region into chaos. Now, remember, Trump gets to sit in America, which is geographically removed, separated by more than just a sea here, and put the whole region in conflict. But he has also told his people domestically, expect casualties from our armed forces. And I'm wondering how people are going to be okay with that, because back home, Donald Trump, like I said, is facing scrutiny over this military campaign. I want to point out that the US Constitution actually states that only their Congress has the authority to declare war, and presidents can only order limited military action in their roles as commander-in-chief. So this sort of prolonged, large-scale operations have to trigger a debate about authorization, and no formal declaration of war has happened. He's not asked, he's not seek any sort of permission, he's not received any sort of permission, he's gone ahead and done it. Remember, he just received a rap on the knuckles from the Supreme Court about the tariff conversation, that he sort of overextended his brief in terms of what his powers are. Is that going to happen again? There are some political opponents within America who are criticizing that these strikes are meant to shift attention away from the Epstein files. There's no verification of evidence that the military action has been launched as a distraction, but weapons of mass distraction is something America is really good at. The broader issue is whether this sort of sustained military engagement without congressional approval is something that can hold legal ground for Donald Trump if that comes to it. But also because he has not had these conversations domestically within his government, the rest of the world, we don't have details as to an insight as to what he's thinking. Because if he had to offer a justification to his government locally, we would know, okay, these are his points, this is his plan, and this is what he's hoping to achieve. We don't have any of that information. So the question of, is this the beginning of a global conflict? Is this a conflict of global consequences, or a regional conflict of global consequences? Is this a World War III? Here are the answers. Right now, it's not. Right now, it's regional, but some trigger points that we should watch. Will Israel decide to do a formal ground invasion into Lebanon? One. Any sort of direct entry of these Gulf states into combat, including and especially Saudi Arabia, that's point number two. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, because, let's be clear. And I'm going to say something a little harsh here, but I think it needs to be said. For all of these countries who are waiting and watching at this point, the death of, and we've seen evidence of this in Sudan, we've seen evidence of this in Gaza, the death of women and children doesn't move them into action. Money, on the other hand, oil, on the other hand, will move many of these guys into action. So if the Strait of Hormuz is actually closed and they're not getting the tail or the oil that they need or they want or they paid for, or the price is shooting through the roof, they will intervene, because men in suits love some money. And that is likely to happen if that strait remains closed. If there is deployment of US ground forces inside Iran, that's another massive red flag. Right now, none of these things have happened per se. If two or more of these things happen simultaneously, we will immediately have to revisit the entire thing. But here's, Like, remember how in the middle I talked to you about the fact that Kuwait actually shot down American planes, and they're on the same side the last I checked. So analysts normally call this fog of war, right? In moments like this, it's confusion, misinformation, sort of split second decision making that leads to mistakes, miscalculations. So in a crowded, and look at this map, if you're looking at it right now, US, Israel, Iran, multiple smaller militias who are not listening to their governments, Gulf states, missiles, drones, air defense systems, all operating simultaneously, plus random information doing the rounds as well. This increases the risk of miscalculation, missiles that land off target, radars that could be misled or misread, drone misidentification, the wrong place being hit, a hospital, a school, an oil rig. These might not be deliberate acts of escalation, but if there is a mistake or a miscalculation made like this and it actually brings retaliation from the other side, those triggers will actually be far worse than any sort of original intent. And that becomes another scary thing in an event like this. So this is no longer about Iran and Israel and which of them sees the other one as the real big threat. Let's be very clear. This is the United States of America interested in controlling the oil of the world. Because Donald Trump, unlike previous presidents of the United States, has not shrouded this in a blanket of politeness. He's been fairly upfront about what he wants. That's why he marched into Venezuela. That's why he has shown interest in Greenland. And that's why he's had his eye on Iran. And even though Iran had a conversation where at the negotiating table, it was not enough. It was not moving fast enough for Donald Trump. So this is where we are. We are in a conflict that is regional, that has the bones to perhaps escalate into something bigger. We're hoping that, Europe has said de-escalate. India has suggested conversations. We are hoping that between all of these parties that there will be some cool heads that finally do prevail. We do know that the Gulf countries, while they have been at this point, sort of needled into considering action, they've always back-channeled conversations between the various parties of the Middle East. So maybe this is something that they consider as well, because they don't want to be dragged into a full-scale escalation. The Gulf monarchies, the Western military bases that are actually present in the Gulf, the global oil markets, the next 72 hours are going to be super critical. We're going to watch it very carefully. We're going to tell you whether diplomacy restarts and what that will mean. But that's really what we're hoping for. The things quieten down enough for the planes to start flying again, for diplomacy and conversation to begin one more time, so that peace actually does prevail. Donald Trump also takes pride in the fact that he has stopped many wars. He should consider how many wars he is starting and how many lives will be lost because of it. But from where we stand right now, it does seem like he doesn't have a plan. He has started something and we don't see which way this is going to go and who is going to be the one who will actually de-escalate. Leave me a comment in the comment section. We're also going to do another video that will follow right after this about what India's stance is in terms of our diplomacy between Israel and between Iran. That'll be a separate video. But leave me a comment on this video and tell me what you thought.